Alright guys, today I have a really important story to discuss with you. I'm also going to connect it to why we must resist backdoors and encryption at all costs. This story covers an advanced persistent threat actor known as ModifiedElephant. It takes place in India and parts of Asia. And over the last decade, this APT has been doing surveillance on human rights activists, on lawyers, on journalists. This is not where it ended. In fact, this threat actor doesn't just do surveillance on these people. It repeatedly targets them, and it sends phishing emails that then add surveillance software and spyware to their devices. But it doesn't end there. This story covers a 10-year running threat actor who has been planting false evidence on lawyers, activists, academics, and human rights activist devices. This is huge, and it speaks volumes as why we cannot allow backdoors and encryption. And why does it relate to backdoors and encryption? Well, not only the aspect of spying on individuals on a mass scale, allowing an automated artificial intelligence powered mass surveillance system. It's not only that, but it's also relating to planting evidence. Now, if devices had a backdoor in encryption, what would that allow? Well, that would allow anyone with physical access to the encrypted drive to then decrypt that drive and plant evidence on the device. This is a huge reason why we can't allow backdoors and encryption. The same can be said for end-to-end encryption. If the end-to-end encryption is backdoored and compromised, this would allow threat actors at this level to then plant false conversations. Encryption without backdoors is one of the most important technological topics that we can cover right now, and I really want to encourage you to share this video because people need to understand that there are parties out there that don't work within rules and guidelines. There are threat actors out there who will work at a highly motivated level for many years, in this case well over a decade of doing this. This threat actor used NSO Group's Pegasus during 2019, and it relates to certain security issues around the India area. And it is politically motivated to silence these human rights activists, these lawyers, these journalists. If there are backdoors in encryption, we will not see the truth in the news. We will not see real journalism anymore. Journalists will live in fear. They won't be able to write stories that they learn of. They won't be able to talk to any of their potential sources because they will have to assume that every conversation is compromised, that every device is modifiable. What encryption does is it allows us to ensure that the integrity of our file system is intact, meaning while it's encrypted, that data cannot be modified to have extra files, say planted evidence as in this case. Encryption is what keeps things between individuals, as mentioned, the integrity itself. This isn't just planning anything. These planted evidence situations seem to coincide with a coordinated arrest of human rights activists, lawyers, journalists, and academics. It seems almost that there is a higher power above this group that's doing this. And they're not giving up after doing it once or twice. They're actually doing this for a 10-year period and going. And if it were not for the forensic investigation by Arsenal Consulting, these individuals may have been imprisoned to this day. But because of the forensic investigation, they were able to prove that the actual files and this so-called evidence that was high-level evidence, speaking of huge acts that are horrific, and they're completely innocent, had it not been for a forensic consultant. Those that are in the journalism field or academics or lawyers, they have to be aware of these kinds of stories. It speaks to how you must have trustable encryption. And I wanted to relate it to stored encryption on your drive, because if your device gets in the hands of somebody who can physically break the encryption and that drive is physically in someone else's hands where they can compromise the encryption, well, you can't trust anything on that file system anymore. The beauty in encryption is it forces integrity in the file system, and nothing is going to be modified as long as that encryption is secured and without backdoors. Hundreds of groups and individuals were targeted by this ModifiedElephant phishing campaign. Just imagine if there were backdoors in the encryption, then the physical devices themselves could easily have that evidence, that false, fabricated, completely made up evidence injected directly to the hardware itself. This is why encryption is so important. You can't trust everyone out there to look in your best interest. And if you want to have human rights, if you want to have real journalism, you have to have backdoor-free encryption. It also speaks to how you cannot just open an attachment in your email account or otherwise. If you get sent a file, even from those you know, they could be sending a backdoor or some other kind of spyware. A lot of times these phishing campaigns, what they do is they go through the entire address book and then they remail out the spyware and make it look like a recognizable email from someone you know. And at that point, once you open that, it then scrapes your address book and causes your device to resend out that spyware and basically acts as a chainmail. Speaking of chainmail, this threat actor actually created pretty advanced tactics in that they made it look like these were forwarded history mails, chainmails, where it had a long list of recipients, original email records that were all faked. But it added some authenticity and it gave the individual receiving it a little more false confidence, and they open it, and at that point they then have some serious problems on their hands. And what's interesting is the relation they found to other malware such as NSO Group's Pegasus. I want to encourage you to share this video, and thank you for watching. Make sure to like, share, subscribe, and check out my previous video, Encryption Under Attack Worldwide, Right to Privacy at Risk, and my other recent video, SMS 2FA provider caught selling identity and tracking location phone records. This involves social media. A lot of social media providers were using this 2FA SMS provider. And check out my blog over at buymeacoffee.com/politictech/posts. And you can also find support options there if interested. And I will be back later with more on how to protect your privacy.